Right. I have a first participant here. Can I invite Richard, please, to unmute yourself, Richard? Richard Clark.
There we go. Greetings, Lumpur, and thank you for the Dharma talk this evening. Also, thank you for your commitment to the online sessions, particularly, after through the COVID and the last couple of years. The last 9 months, I've been watching my mother die, listening to your thoughts about death and pain and suffering. It's a learning experience, I guess. Before Christmas, she had a stroke, and the doctors thought she wouldn't last to Christmas. And then, I think at your end of year retreat, I determined to bathe her in metta. I don't know if that's related or not to her surviving, but she's made it to 99 in April and continues. She's all of 33 kilos now, just a skeleton covered with bones. Bones covered with skin. But her mind is kind of there sometimes and sometimes not. So last week, in meditation, just sitting with a fairly clear Chitakasa, watching some delight patterns and so on. There was this very strong image of her sitting in the chair. She's bedridden or chair-ridden, dead, and no life, no movement, no breathing. So just observe that, and a little bit longer, there was an image of a skull and bones, as if in a tomb or catacomb, something like that. I don't know if you have any comments about, the significance of that image, but I get the sense that, the end is approaching. I used to work in pathology. I'm not, fussed with dead bodies or bits of bodies or what have you. But I suppose that's the one thing, and the energy, the sharing of metta. The other thing, so I've been staying away from the monastery and other kind of gatherings of people because of COVID, not wanting to take it to the aged care facility. The other issue is some pain in the knees and so on that make it difficult to drive and sit for a long time. So the related issue is I've been seeing traditional Chinese medicine practitioner who I've known for 30 years. And he gives, the Chinese medicine and the acupuncture and so forth, but also Qigong, and shows practices and a little bit of Taoist meditation as well. I remember from the library at East Wolverton, there's a book on the lower shelf, a kind of reference book. And I once read there that there was the Buddhist code. I don't know if it was one of the councils or whatnot, but it was resolved not to encourage healing by energy transfer. Do you have any views on that as well? Thank you.
Well, firstly, you're doing a good job caring for your mum, being with your mum in her last period of her life. That's a very noble thing, praiseworthy thing to do. And if she is so weak that you can't communicate, well, you can always meditate. Like, it sounds like you've been doing that. That's a really good thing to do. Just meditate with her, be with her, make your own mind more peaceful so you can accept the inevitable loss of your mum. But also, if you're peaceful, maybe that can also have an effect on her in a good way. And when you are peaceful, then your mind is more able to accept the fact, the impermanence of life. And, you know, if you have a loved one like your mother is close to death, your mind will be able to accept it. And then sometimes it will bring up these images, like you might see your mum, an image of her dead already, even though she hasn't died. It's just your mind preparing for that inevitable truth. And it's probably a sign that your mind is ready for that. You've contemplated enough, you've prepared yourself. So even though it's sad, of course, it's not what we want, but it's inevitable. And the best thing is for your mind to come to that, to come to terms with that and accept that. And then to focus on the good of her life. And if you are still able to communicate with her at any time, or get her to also focus on the good of her life, if there's any way you can do that through any communication, talking, reading, sharing time together to help uplift her mind, that would be a good thing. As far as energy transfer, well, not exactly sure what you're referring to, but monks themselves, we have rules. We're not allowed to act like a doctor or prescribe medicine or act like a healer. Our own discipline prevents us from doing that. But what all monks will tell you is that if you practice meditation regularly, it does develop positive energy, which quite naturally flows around your own body. So when you're more peaceful and your mind is more calm, letting go of distractions, worries, fears, and so on, then quite naturally the good energy does flow around. It has a healing effect, boosting effect on your body. It may also be able to help the person if you're close to them and you think of them, what we call spreading metta to that person. It may have a subtle good effect on that person. But no, I'd caution against reading too much into it or expecting too much. Meditate and spread metta to your mum. You know, I wouldn't expect too much from that, but if anything can help to keep her more calm, give her more positive inputs, a difficult time, the end of her life, well, that's good. And many of us do that. Like I've sat with my parents when they were dying and I just meditate and spread metta to them, and that's fine. That's slightly different. You know, the intention is not the same as sort of trying to heal or become a healer. Say for a Buddhist monk, we can't do that. A layperson could. You could train in psychic healing or something, or people can do that. But definitely the human mind, when we're more peaceful, it has a positive energy. And if we direct that to a person, then it can have some good effect. So there's no harm in trying that or doing that.
Thank you. Sadhu and Bhante.
Anyone's got any question? There's a typewritten question here. Allow me to please read it out to you. This is from TC Tan. Good evening, Lompo. Observing the feeling of breathing and the feet touching the floor during walking meditation. Is that what you mean by developing samatha? May Lompo please explain further. Thank you, Sadhu.
Well, samatha meditation means putting the mind on one object. So if you're doing walking meditation, that object could be the recitation of the word Buddho. So you just quietly recite that to yourself and you just focus there as you walk. Or you could focus on the sensation of the feet touching the ground. So that's your one pointedness. That's where that's the object that you become aware of or mindful of, the touching of the ground. Or, as I said, it's possible some people can watch the breath because they've done so much breath meditation sitting. When they're walking, they can pick it up at the same spot. So it could be the tip of the nostrils or the chest. So they're walking back and forth, but watching the breath. It is possible. And there are other objects you could use, samatha objects such as metta, loving, focusing on the thought of loving kindness, focusing on another part of the body, the hair or the skin or something. So any of the traditional samatha objects can be practiced, or most of them can be practiced when you're walking as well as when you're sitting. The only thing just to be aware of is if your mind gathers, the energy of the mind gathers together or unifies in samadhi, you may reach a point where you have to stop walking and you stand still and you close your eyes and all your energy gathers together inside for a while. Because when the mind becomes really still, really one-pointed, you can't move. It's gone inwards, and it might even be awkward to try moving. You might fall over or bang into something. So be ready for that. If your mind gathers together, it becomes really peaceful. Samadhi arises. You may just stop, pause the walking, and you do standing meditation and your mind goes inwards, or you may just go off and sit down once your mind gathers in samadhi. But if it's a more open level of samadhi, what we call upajjhara samadhi, where you can carry on walking back and forth and the 5 hindrances may have disappeared from your experience then, but you can still walk and move around. And this is samatha is opposed to vipassana. Vipassana is more focusing on the universal characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, on the selfless nature, the way things arise according to causes and conditions, pass away. One turns to develop those insights, meditations, and one can still do that in the walking posture or the sitting posture. But one is now following or investigating the 5 khandhas, or one aspect of the 5 khandhas, whatever aspect is coming into your experience.
Brother TC, I hope that answers your question. But there are 2 more questions here. Actually, there's a couple more questions. This one is from someone anonymous. Can Lompo please give advice on how to overcome lust?
Contemplate the disadvantages of lust is one. It's the danger, because lust is very strong attachment. It can lead us to break the precepts. Strong lust, say you have a relationship, can lead you to cheat on your partner or have some kind of illicit relationship or commit acts of sexual misconduct in one way or another. It's very overwhelming to the mind, it absorbs the mind. We waste, as human beings, we waste and expend a lot of mental energy following lustful thoughts, lustful moods. That's just one basic reflection. Just reflect on the disadvantages and the harm of following lust. And then specifically focus on the unattractiveness of the body, the asuppa kammattanas, the asuppa meditations. And there's many ways of approaching that. You can contemplate the 32 parts of the body, stripping the body down like a motor car in a mechanic shop, where you take each part of this body apart and set it down on the floor in front of you. So you're doing it as a mental activity, going through hair of the head, nails, teeth, skin, the internal organs, the bones and the flesh and the blood. And as you take the skin off as a mental exercise, visual exercise, you pull the skin off, like if you were to ever see a surgery or autopsy. It's not a pleasant sight, is it? If you ever have seen that in real life, it's smelly, it's repulsive. It takes quite a lot of effort to be able to watch an autopsy. And people faint. I've been to see autopsies and monks standing next to you, they just faint because it's such a strong experience. So you have to approach it with caution, of course, but this is the way to teach yourself, what is it that you're lusting after? You know, the human body is actually not that attractive. It has a lot of unattractive bits to it. You can start with the easy bits, you know, contemplate the sweat, the grease, the body smell, body odor, the excrement, the urine, all the sort of more obvious bits of the body that we encounter every day that are not very beautiful in our bodies and in the bodies of others. And then when you become more steady and more skilled in it, then you may take the body apart and go in deeper inside and, you know, contemplate the heart or the bones or the liver. None of these things are very attractive. You know, we don't lust after people's liver or their intestines. You can use other things to help. So, you know, if you ever walk past a butcher's shop, like here in Mount Pleasant where we are, we go on Bindabat past the butcher's shop, and as you walk past, you glance in and you see dead animals hanging up, and they don't look very attractive. But actually, human beings, if they were dead, hanging up would be exactly the same. You know, flesh is like that, guts are like that, bones are like that. So you use whatever information you've got from what you see and observe in your own body. You can look online, you can use your imagination, and you start visualizing, and what you're doing is evening out or balancing up your perceptions that, you know, this human body has its beautiful side, and we're always trying to develop that because of our lust. But it also has an unattractive side, which is equally true, equally real. It's just we always ignore it. We try and avoid the bits we don't like because we want to follow our lust. We don't like being peaceful towards the body. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound natural. And that's another part of it. You know, people think they associate lust with just the normal human urges. And in one sense, you could say, well, they are, but they're also the great cause of suffering. Attachment, identification with the body, lust for the body, lust for other people's bodies. And an awful lot of suffering has been caused in this world by people acting on their lust, and often in indirect ways as well. So it's not just following lust, but, you know, presenting your image to the world is often lust-based. You're trying to present and impress the world. The way you dress, the way you look, the job you do, the power you have, the money and property you own, all kinds of things we use as a projection of who we are, and a lot of that is being stimulated from our lustful attachment to our body and then projecting that onto the world. So any way you can get insight into this will actually bring you a lot of peace. And of course, eventually, if you abandon lust, you become what we call an anagami, a non-returner. You go beyond being born as a human being. Even if you haven't reached Nibbana, you're reborn in the Brahma realms. If you're in a Brahma realm, even if you're not an anagami, but you've attained jhana and you're reborn in a Brahma realm, there's no more gender, so there's no more lust. They're celibate and they're peaceful because they don't have to worry about lust anymore. So if you want a taste of that, well, you could take the 8 precepts of brahmacharya, the 3rd precept, so you're determined to avoid all sexual activity with anyone, with yourself, with anyone else. Just like when you're on retreat or you come into a monastery, and it's a good start just to train yourself to give up sexual activity. You'll still have lust in your mind, and it will come up from time to time, maybe strongly, but you have your precept, your discipline to help you to deal with it. And then once you're keeping the precept of celibacy, when lust arises, you've already determined you're not going to follow it in any kind of sexual behavior. So then you can see that desire, those movements of the mind, as impermanent as not self, because you're not going to act on them. As long as you keep that precept sincerely, truly, then it exposes the impermanence and selfless nature of lust. So that supports your practice of vipassana and insight.
I hope that answers your question. The next question is from Luna. Dear Ajahn, how do I deal with thoughts of attachment to an important person, such as a parent or a spiritual teacher? Thank you.
Well, just it's a natural thing. Attachment comes from unawareness. So if you're with someone like a parent, you know, from day one you're born to your mother and you see your mum and dad every day, it's natural you'll build up an attachment to them. Or if later on you have a teacher, spiritual teacher, you trust them, you listen to them, you follow their advice, you see them regularly, or you may build up an attachment to them. So it is a natural thing that will tend to happen, but then you have to investigate it by contemplating the three characteristics. So even parents and teachers are impermanent, unsatisfactory, not self, in the sense they are not going to last, they won't be here forever. So this is why the Buddha had us reflect on impermanence every day. You know, we are all getting older. One day we'll get sick. One day we have to die. Death means separation from everyone that you love and like or attached to. So even just bringing that reflection up once a day will already remind you of impermanence, and that will help you to manage your attachment and start to develop some wisdom around it. So say, with parents, what you're really recognizing in your parents is all the good qualities, the love, the compassion, the sacrifice, the help, the energy, all the good things they've given you, the advice, the wisdom, the knowledge. And you can recollect that, all those qualities, rather than just blindly attaching to the person, the personality. So as you practice more, you recognize the good in your parents, but you don't have to just blindly attach to them, because you know that one day they'll get old, get sick and die. But you can develop gratitude, appreciation for their goodness, forgive them if they have their faults. So you're relating to them from a place of Dhamma, from wisdom, rather than just blind attachment. And then you'll find you don't get so angry or upset if they have different views on things than you. You're just seeing them more from a place of Dhamma. And the same with teachers. Say you have a teacher, a Dhamma teacher, that previously you've been attached to, but then over time you start to realize, well, that Dhamma teacher, you may have faith in them because they embody certain qualities. You know, they practice well, sincerely, they have precepts, they have wisdom. So you start over time changing from just attaching to them as a personality to recognizing the good qualities in that teacher, how they embody those qualities, and you wish to follow those qualities. But it's the qualities that you're wishing to emulate and develop for yourself, rather than just clinging to the person, because you know the person one day will die, they'll be gone. So all attachments are like that. By reflecting on your attachment, where it's coming from, its nature, you're changing the relationship to attachment from one of just blindly clinging to one of seeing the Dhamma in that relationship, if it's a person. And then the suffering of separation will get less and less.
We have one last question. Anyone? Anyone's got a final question, comment? Well, thank you, Sister Ante, for sharing your experience with managing your mother's illness. I'm very grateful for you sharing that. I'm quite sure many people on this stream would benefit from it. Okay. Well, Lampa, I think that's all for tonight. And we wish you well, and we wish all the Sangha now in Bodhipala, as well as the Buddha Bodhivana Monastery, well, and keep safe as you enter the Vasa. And may you stay strong in your practice. And till we meet again, be well.
So South Australia, we wish everybody well. May the blessings of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha guide you and protect you.
Sadhu.